Motivation is the reason you're failing, not the lack of it, the pursuit of it. And here's the disturbing reality: behavioral psychologists have proven that people who wait for motivation before taking action achieve 73% less than people who act regardless of how they feel. You've been lied to, told that you need to feel inspired before you move. But motivation is a marketing scam designed to keep you consuming content instead of creating results. By the end of this video, I'll reveal the psychological framework that eliminates your dependence on motivation entirely. But first, you need to see what chasing motivation is costing you. Let me show you what's happening right now. You wake up, you don't feel motivated, so you scroll, hoping to find a video or quote that sparks something. You watch, you feel a surge. Today's the day. You're energized, ready, you start the task. 20 minutes later, the feeling fades, and you stop, because the motivation is gone. And you think that means you should stop, but that's the trap. You've been conditioned to believe that action requires a feeling, and when the feeling disappears, so does your progress. You're not building anything, you're riding emotional waves, and waves always crash. Here's what nobody tells you about motivation. It's a temporary chemical reaction in your brain. Dopamine spikes, you feel good. Dopamine depletes, you feel nothing. And the entire motivational industry is built on giving you microhits of dopamine so you keep coming back. You watch the video, you feel inspired. You subscribe, you watch another, you feel inspired again, but you never act, because the content gave you the feeling without requiring the work. Your brain got the reward without the effort, and now it's addicted to the shortcut. Now here's the brutal part. The more you rely on motivation, the weaker you become. Because you're outsourcing your drive to external stimuli. You need the right song, the right quote, the right mood, the right weather. And when those conditions aren't met, you don't move. You've become dependent. And dependency is the opposite of power. You're not in control of your actions. Your feelings are. And feelings are the least reliable force in the universe. Let me tell you what motivation dependency costs you. First, consistency disappears. You're productive when you feel like it, which means you're inconsistent, and inconsistency guarantees mediocrity. Second, self-trust erodes. Every time you say I'll do it when I feel motivated and you don't, you're breaking a promise to yourself. Third, time evaporates. You waste hours trying to manufacture a feeling instead of just doing the work. Fourth, identity weakens. You become someone who needs permission from their emotions to act, and that identity is a prison. Here's what's actually happening in your brain. Motivation is driven by the limbic system, your emotional, impulsive center. It's designed for short bursts. Hunt the food, escape the danger, reproduce. It's not designed for long-term goals, for building businesses, for getting in shape, for mastering skills. Those require sustained effort over months or years. And the limbic system doesn't do sustained, it does spikes. So when you rely on motivation for long-term goals, you're using the wrong tool. You're trying to build a house with a hammer designed for nails, not walls. Now here's the shift that changes everything. High performers don't rely on motivation, they rely on systems. And the core system is this: they act before they feel like it. They don't wait for inspiration. They create conditions that force action regardless of emotional state. They wake up at the same time. They work at the same time. They execute the same routine, whether they feel like it or not, because they understand that feelings follow action, not the other way around. Here's the framework. There are two types of people: motivation dependent and system dependent. Motivation dependent people say I'll work out when I feel energized. System dependent people say I work out at 7 a.m. every day. Motivation dependent people say I'll work on my project when inspiration hits. System-dependent people say I work on my project from 9 to 11 every morning. See the difference? One waits for permission from their emotions. The other has pre-decided and just executes. Let me show you what this looks like in practice. It's 6 a.m. The alarm goes off. You don't feel like getting up. Motivation-dependent, you hit snooze. System-dependent, you gets up. Not because you feel like it, because that's what you do at 6 a.m. You've removed the decision from the moment. You decided weeks ago. Now you just comply. And compliance doesn't require motivation. It requires commitment. And commitment is a decision, not a feeling. But here's the trap. People hear systems and think it means being robotic, emotionless, joyless, but that's not what this is. Systems don't eliminate emotion, they eliminate emotional dependency. You still feel motivated sometimes, and when you do, great, you ride the wave. But when you don't stop. You keep moving, because your progress is not tied to how you feel, it's tied to what you do. And what you do is determined by the system, not the emotion. Here's the psychology. Motivation is an accelerant. It makes things easier, but it's not the engine. The engine is discipline. And discipline is the decision to do what you committed to regardless of how you feel in the moment. Motivation is the bonus. Discipline is the baseline. And if you build your life on the baseline, the bonus becomes irrelevant. You don't need it, but when it shows up, you use it. And when it doesn't, you're fine, because you're not dependent. Now here's where it gets interesting. The reason you feel unmotivated most of the time is because you're waiting for it instead of creating it. Motivation doesn't precede action, it follows it. You don't feel like working out, so you don't. But if you force yourself to start, 5 minutes in, you feel good. The motivation appears, not before, after, because action generates neurochemicals. Movement creates dopamine, progress creates satisfaction, but you have to start to access them. And starting is the exact thing motivation-dependent people can't do. Here's the neuroscience. When you take action, your brain releases dopamine, serotonin, and endorphins. These chemicals create the feeling we call motivation, but they only release during or after action, not before. So when you wait to feel motivated before you act, you're waiting for chemicals that only appear when you act. You're stuck in a paradox. The solution is to act first, to move before you feel like it, and to trust that the feeling will follow. And it does, every time. Let me give you the protocol. You stop asking, do I feel like doing this, and you start asking, did I commit to doing this? If the answer is yes, you do it. No negotiation, no waiting for the right mood. You've pre-decided, now you execute. This removes the internal debate. The mental energy wasted on should I or shouldn't I is eliminated. You just act, and action creates momentum, and momentum creates more action, and eventually, you don't need motivation, because you're already moving. But here's the part most people skip. You have to set up your environment to support the system. You can't rely on willpower in the moment. You have to make the right choice, the easy choice. You want to work out in the morning? Put your workout clothes next to your bed. You want to write every day? Open the document before you go to sleep. You're reducing friction for the behavior you want and increasing friction for the behavior you don't. This is environment design. And environment beats willpower every time. Here's what elite performers understand. They don't have more motivation than you. They have better systems. They've automated the behaviors that matter. They don't think about whether to work out. They just do. They don't debate whether to work on their goals. They've scheduled it. The decision was made once, weeks or months ago. Now they just follow the system. And the system doesn't care about feelings. It just runs. Now here's the secret method I promised you. It's called the 2-minute start. When you don't feel like doing something, you commit to just 2 minutes. Not the whole workout, just 2 minutes. Not the whole project, just 2 minutes. You're lowering the activation energy. And here's what happens: once you start, you usually keep going. Because starting is the hard part, continuing is easy. Your brain resists the idea of the full task, but it can't resist 2 minutes. So you trick it, and the trick works. Here's what happens when you use the 2-minute start consistently. You realize that motivation was never the issue. Activation was. You weren't lacking the desire to do the work. You were lacking the willingness to start. And once you start, the resistance dissolves. You thought you needed to feel motivated for an hour, but you only needed to feel willing for 2 minutes. And willingness is easier to manufacture than motivation, because willingness is a decision. Motivation is a feeling, and decisions beat feelings. But here's the trap. Some people start and then stop at 2 minutes. They use the rule as permission to do the minimum. But that's not the point. The point is to remove the barrier to starting. Once you're in motion, you keep going. Not because you have to, but because motion creates its own momentum. And momentum carries you further than motivation ever could. You're not forcing yourself to finish, you're just not stopping. Here's the identity shift you need. You're not someone who needs to feel motivated, you're someone who acts regardless of how they feel. That's the identity. And every time you act without motivation, you're reinforcing it. You're proving to yourself that feelings don't control you, that you're stronger than your moods, that you're someone who keeps commitments even when it's hard, and that identity is worth more than any temporary surge of motivation. Let me show you what happens when you break free from motivation dependency. You become unstoppable, not because you're always fired up, but because you're always moving. You have bad days, you feel low, but you still show up, you still execute. And while everyone else is waiting to feel ready, you're already done. You've worked out, you've made progress, you've built, and the gap between you and them widens. Not because you're more talented, but because you didn't wait. Here's the truth: motivation will fail you repeatedly. It will disappear right when you need it most. And if you're dependent on it, you'll fail too. But if you've built systems, if you've trained yourself to act without it, you're immune. The feeling can come and go. You don't care, because you're not waiting for it. You're moving regardless. And movement is the only thing that creates results. Now let me tell you what you're losing every day you wait for motivation. You're losing time you'll never get back. You're losing progress you could have made. You're losing the identity of someone who follows through. And you're reinforcing the belief that you need external permission to act. And that belief is a cage, because external permission is unreliable. It's not coming. And while you wait, life passes. Here's what happens if you don't fix this. 5 years from now, you're still waiting, still watching motivational content, still feeling inspired and doing nothing, still stuck in the same place. Because motivation is an endless loop. You consume it, you feel good, you don't act. The feeling fades, you consume more, and the cycle repeats, forever, until you realize the content was never meant to make you move, it was meant to make you watch. So here's what you're going to do today. You're going to pick one thing you've been waiting to feel motivated to do, and you're going to do it, right now, not after this video, not after you feel ready. Now, you're going to commit to 2 minutes, and you're going to start. And you're going to prove to yourself that you don't need motivation, you just need to move, because motivation is a trap. It promises you'll feel ready, but ready never comes. It tells you to wait for the right time, but the right time is now. It convinces you that action requires a feeling, but action only requires a decision. And the decision is simple: move or stay stuck, act or wait, build or consume. High performers chose to move, to act, to build. Not because they felt like it, but because they decided to, and that decision made them who they are. You have the same choice, right now, this moment. Stop waiting for motivation. Start building systems. Stop chasing feelings. Start executing commitments. Stop being dependent. Start being disciplined. Motivation is the trap. Discipline is the freedom. And freedom starts the second you stop waiting and start moving. What are you starting right now?